Hey guys, it's Trevor and Rory back again to discuss another topic that we not necessarily have gone in depth over on the podcast or any of our previous videos, but this topic is more of a topic that affects all gamers in general, and that being frame rate, resolution, and performance. And does it actually matter?
Yes, and how much does each of them matter? I think because these sorts of things get thrown around a lot in discussing games and in terms of what influences you to play certain games, or what kind of games people say are good or performant. And I think that breaking them down in this way and leveling their importance will help us sort of understand like what kind of games we respond to and why we respond to them. So I guess we're going to start with what we think is the least important of the three.
Yes, and then we'll work our way through and then we'll explain why.
Yes, exactly.
So, resolution is the first thing that we're going to talk about, and that being said, this is the one that we don't think is as important as the other 2 points in this video.
Yeah, I would say resolution in determining whether I play a game and when I sit down to play a game, when I adjust my settings, resolution basically never comes up because resolution is sort of the prettiness thing, and I'm big into gameplay, right? I'm big into the action of what's happening in the game, and resolution never really comes up there, to be honest. And I think that people seeking higher and higher resolutions, people who seek to play at 4K and stuff like that,
which is a scam. 4K is a scam. Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Yeah, I really don't support the need to game at 4K because I think, to be honest, a lot of people's systems just aren't ready to play at that resolution. And I think that by telling console manufacturers and stuff like that you really want to play at 4K, you're telling them the wrong thing is important to you, because resolution, you get a still photo of your game or whatever, and it's at a high resolution, it looks great. But if you start moving and it's stuttering like crazy, then you've chosen the wrong thing. Yeah, you have absolutely other problems. And
I think 4K is only really gonna be good for like games with photo mode, so then like you can capture stuff at 4K. But then again, that's a small. And if you're basing your entire priority for making a game on just one mode that's relatively new, you're gonna have a bad time when a bunch of people complain about how your game is like consistent with performance.
Well, exactly, and I think this can be seen in a lot of ways. So when people make a game for a console, like Tekken 7, for instance, for the console versions of that, they lowered the resolution so the game could run smoother, right? They sacrificed resolution for smoothness, because to fighting game players, smoothness is what matters. You and I love action games like Devil May Cry, right?
Yes.
Devil May Cry 3 on the original PS2 isn't in this crazy resolution, but we could absolutely still play it and enjoy it because the gameplay itself is smooth.
Yeah, I think in this particular topic, its resolution is not as high on the tier list for, just basic performance and playability.
Yeah, absolutely. And, while the people who make your monitor might want to get you to believe that it's the most important, I think that people who actually play games will tell you that resolution ends up being very low down because it, like I say, it doesn't refer to the action of actually playing the game. It simply refers to looking at it.
Yeah. To touch on the 4K thing again, I know the other resolution is 2160p? Like, maybe you could run at that, but even then it's like, again, the example of like, why would you need to? Like, running at 4K is like pointless, and 2160p is just like the in between, and it's just like, oh hey, I don't have 4K, but it's like I don't really need 2160p either.
Yeah. I still play most of my games at 1080. All of them, really. I play at 1080 and prioritize other things other than resolution.
Because like you were saying, with like certain games, they'll sacrifice something else on the console version anyway, so they have a stabler performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Which tells you that a lot of companies know what is important, as opposed to just making, like, you can make your game look as pretty as you want, but if there's 1,000 bugs in it, if you're like Skyrim or something, that's like, well, like everyone constantly be bringing that shit up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's definitely more to it than resolution. A lot more.
So, if any of you watch the podcast, you'll know that 3 of the 4 hosts on that show have recently switched to PC gaming. And as somebody who recently switched to PC gaming and is still primarily a console player occasionally, honestly, I'm gonna throw this out there, and it may get, people dying on the hill with me or not, but honestly, the whole thing about frame rate, like, I don't get it. There are so many games I've played on console that are locked at 30 FPS that I feel are fine, and the people who are like, oh no, I can't play this because it's not at 3,000 frames and it hurts my eyes. It's like, I think that's just like a thing they taught themselves, that it's like, oh, it has to be this or else I can't play it. And it's like, that's a stupid way to look at it, because you're missing out on so many great games just because you want to be like, I don't know if petty is the right word, but like you want to be a quote unquote slave to the frame rate. You have to be playing something over 120 frames or else you're gonna be sitting there like, oh, I can't tell the difference. Like I can tell the difference between 120 and 80. It's like, no, you really can't, because like the frames move so fast that like you won't be able to tell after 60.
So for me personally, I have a different set of experiences than you in with regards to this, because I'm the one host on SBH who's always
been doing PC for their life.
Yeah. And so for me, what I would say is that no matter how you slice it, frame rate is definitely more important than resolution, basically, right? Yeah. Because ultimately, frame rate is one of the things that refers to actually playing the game, right? You're moving around. Right, you're doing things within the game. I tend to try to prioritize getting a high frame rate over getting a high resolution. That being said, I still find myself perfectly able to play a console game at 30 frames, right? Like, for instance, if I'm not a Soulsborne player, but let's say I wanted to be and I picked up Bloodborne, it wouldn't hurt my eyes to look at it. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't not play Bloodborne because of the frame rate. I definitely think it's more important than resolution, and I think that the console manufacturers, the people who make the consoles that so many people play on, agree, because what we were saying in the last point was that they prioritize other things above resolution. One of those things is frame rate. When they made Tekken 7 on the console, they had to make sure it runs at 60 frames because it's a fighting game, right? And you have frame data in a fighting game. That has a very particular thing. In order to get it up to 60, they lowered the resolution. On Xbox, I think it runs at 720, and that's fine. Plays really well. So yeah, I definitely, I guess I'm somewhere in the middle ground. I'm not
you're
like
neutral. You're not like trying to say one is objectively better and objectively worse.
Yeah, like, would I rather absolutely play my games at 60 frames than 30 frames? Yes. Can I tell the difference between those two things? Yes, absolutely. But would I not play something because it's at 30? No. If it's on a console. If there's a reason for it to be at 30. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Basically. Like I get that on the console there's a reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's limited by the hardware on the console, and like depending on what they did for the game, then I could understand. But if it's just like for no reason it's at like 30 or something, it's like, all right, like I'm playing this on PC instead.
If you lock your PC game to 30, I'm going to be pretty upset. You know what I mean? If you're making games out here on the PC and you're locking that to 30 frames, I'm confused.
Yeah.
But
it's like, what?
I get that, that's the standard for this past generation of consoles. I have to imagine that that's going to be changing now, with the next generation coming out. But yeah, so I guess I find myself maybe somewhere in the middle of those two things, of where you're at versus the people who say they can't play a game at 30, because I can absolutely play a game at 30, no problem.
Going back to the Bloodborne example, the only people who I've ever seen mention the whole frame rate and like, oh, I wish this was at 60, or like I hope this gets remastered so I can play it on PC so it's be at 60. It's like all those people are just like, I feel like people who are PC players to begin with and like didn't really grow up with consoles, and then it's like just because they've been, I guess, groomed and thinking that like PC is the only way they can play games and enjoy them, which is like not the case, because like I feel like if you grow up playing on consoles your entire life and then switch to PC, it's like you appreciate the transition and like come up from going from 30 FPS to 60 and then like playing in between the two.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I guess it probably depends a bit on your experiences and what you're used to, like looking for in a game. That probably plays a bit on the resolution too. Like you and me, when we came up, we played PS2 games a lot. Even me as a PC gamer, I grew up and I played PS2 games, right? Quite a bit of great titles on there. And so for us, like the resolution standard is like very different. I wonder what like young gamers coming up now, where like 1080 is a minimum, I wonder how they would feel about going back to one of the older
Those are the
PS2
4K
titles.
believers. We don't talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
4K believers. And that brings us to our last point, which is performance. And what we think to be the most important topic of this video.
Yes, absolutely. Performance is the number one thing, no matter what you say about, well, especially about resolution, and no matter what you might say about frame rate. Ultimately, stability is the cardinal thing to break in a game. Is to have your game crash and have it not function properly. Ultimately, this is one of the things. Unfortunately, this is one of the things that I, as a PC player, we sometimes suffer from with bad ports of console games. A game is made for the console and they port it over to PC and it crashes all the time.
Arkham Knight. I say this a lot on the podcast. That's my least favorite Arkham game.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that the PC port is bad. Further sit down that list.
And I think as well, going into stability and performance, one of the other important factors of performance, that one of the main draws about PC is, shorter load times. I've always said that as a console generation ends, we feel, people who play the consoles, they feel the age of the hardware in the console, and I think that that's especially the case with load times, because if you think about the PS4, it has a hard drive in it, not a solid state drive, and boy, the load times on that thing,
you can tell.
You and me played Division 2 on PS4 first.
Yes.
Because it was cheap, and one of our friends was on PS4, and then when you switch to PC, you play Division 2 on PC, you're like, wow, you get so much more done in a session,
Not only was it like performing better, just like the gameplay itself. So for those who don't know, when we played the Division 2 on PS4, we were constantly running this like bullshit of like invisible walls, or just like models not loading in, or like just textures not loading and stuff. But you switch to PC, and then and even fast travel took us a good 5 minutes to accomplish. It wasn't like 5, but it was like
but it took forever.
Yeah, it was like 2 minutes.
It was aggravating. Yeah.
And then on PC, you do all that shit in I don't know, 10 seconds. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's very symptomatic. For instance, so you and I don't play My Time at Portia, but one of our other hosts, Morgan, she plays My Time at Portia, and she originally played it on the Switch. And one of the things that she had said was the load times were crazy long.
Atrocious.
Right?
She was like, it was taking forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then nowadays she plays it on PC, and it was the first thing she noticed was faster load times. And you and I have both played Monster Hunter World.
Yes.
That's a pretty drastic change too.
To put in perspective, I put over 860 hours on Monster Hunter World on PS4. I want to say a good, 200 some hours of that is me waiting for the quest to load.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, and I've heard that grouping and stuff like that, takes some time.
Yeah,
right?
Especially trying to play online. It's like you gotta wait to connect with somebody else, then they gotta approve it, and then it's gotta get transferred, then you gotta get to where they are, and it's just like, alright, this is already a 5-minute process. On PC, you can load into the quest before you can ready up, which is mind-blowing from someone coming from PS4, where it was like, you're loading in this quest, alright, I can go downstairs, get a drink, use the bathroom, come back up, it still won't be ready. So for everybody who's watching this, let us know your thoughts and opinions down below. Let us know if you agree with our ranking of the trifecta of what gamers look for, albeit performance, frame rate, or resolution. If you agree, great. If you disagree, let us know why. But yeah, that's all we got for this time.
We'll be back in the future, I'm sure, with another video.
Yes.
Before too long, and the podcast, if you want to listen to the podcast live, it's every Wednesday at 9 Eastern, and if you want to check out VODs, you can watch the VODs on Twitch, or if you have too much self-respect for that, you can watch them here on the YouTube channel. They're all here, all our past episodes.
They're all on a playlist that gets updated every single time we do the cast. Like, comment, subscribe.
Take it easy, everyone.